Hey, everybody, some cool news about the pod before we get going on today's show. Ion College Basketball is again a finalist in the Sports Podcast Awards in the category for Best Basketball Podcast. So, in an effort to do some PSA work this time around, we wanted to get the word out. And by that, I mean we're doing it in the final week of voting. If you're watching on YouTube, you see a QR code right over my right shoulder here. Feel free to tap that and head on through. If you are listening to this podcast on your phone, on a tablet, through any podcast provider you use, go to the episode description of this show. We will have a link to the Sports Podcast Awards site where you can go and log your vote. I've already done it. It takes less than 60 seconds to do. They tell me that these awards are entirely determined by fan votes, so let's go out and prove that. There's more of us than there are of them, and if we wind up winning, who knows? Maybe we'll finally actually start making and selling t-shirts related to the show that you can wear proudly. But regardless, appreciate you so much. Because of our listenership, you make this possible. So go ahead, go vote often, tell your friends. Appreciate you. And now let's get to the show.
Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports Ion College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here, okay? Let's get into it. The most interesting game on Thursday night schedule, it was Purdue at Rutgers. I think it was the back-to-back Big Ten champs against a couple projected one-and-done top-5 picks. It did not go well for the young guys. Final score, Purdue 68, Rutgers 50 inside Jersey Mike's rack. That's what I'm calling it.
All
Dylan
right.
Harper and Ace Bailey combined to go 7 of 24 from the field. So now Rutgers is 8-8 overall, 1-4 in the Big Ten, 0-6 in quadrant one, and nowhere near the NCAA tournament bubble. Norlander, these Scarlet Knights seem well on their way to making history, but not the good kind. You detailed it in this week's court report, so please remind us, what kind of bad history is Rutgers on track to make this season?
Good morning, GP. Happy Friday, everyone. Yeah, starting off on a downer of a note, as I dub them, the biggest bummer in college basketball. Would you, before we dive into this, would you agree? Like this season, this does feel like the biggest bummer. Like I wanted to see a Rutgers team with 2 future top 5 picks, and I didn't expect them to be, a top 3, a top 4, maybe not even a top 5 team in the Big Ten. But I thought at minimum they would be a team that was going to be on the bubble and a will they, won't they. I thought that would be the worst case scenario. I thought the best case scenario could be like, maybe these guys are going to be awesome, transform it, and maybe they can be like the 5th best team in the Big Ten. But do you agree? Biggest bummer in the sport? Can you think of a story that's more of a letdown right now than these Scarlet Knights?
No, I think this is it. I mean, I can remember at one point in the offseason, our bosses were sort of like surveying, hey, so what are some of the biggest stories in college basketball you think heading into the season? And of course, you start the list with UConn trying to three-peat, and then you get to Cooper Flag pretty quickly. But I think in my top 5 of things to follow this season, it was 2 5-star freshmen at Rutgers, 2 projected top 5 picks, in Piscataway. And the idea that it's now sitting here 16 games in, only 8-8, yeah, to me, that's the biggest disappointment in the sport, because what it suggests is that we're going to play the NCAA tournament without maybe 2 of the top 3 NBA prospects we have in college basketball. Like, that's not good for anybody. And so I would differ with you in saying I thought worst case scenario was like on the bubble, because like I always like this was worst case scenario.
But like, you didn't think. I mean, if you could take the credit, I didn't think we'd get to the second week of January and Rutgers would look this bad, this not in the NCAA tournament conversation, in this, a 500 record with, I didn't see it. If you did,
no. I want to be clear. I didn't see it coming. I just wouldn't rule it out because, it was just a few years ago. You probably remember this. There was a team that was preseason number 1 that missed the NCAA tournament. So if you can do that, I always assumed you can also miss the NCAA tournament with 2 5-star freshmen. I'd put the worst case scenario a little lower. But like, here we are. This is where we're at. Best case scenario, I thought they'd be good, like actually good. Like I had them preseason top 25 and 1. I'm embarrassed to say. But yeah, it's a bummer. It stinks. Like how about this? I was here a few weeks ago with a day off, and at one point had thought about going to Rutgers and decided to spend that day with Mark Pope in Kentucky instead, because Rutgers has been so disappointing, and I was more interested in writing about something that's going well as opposed to something that's going not so well. And you had some interesting quotes from other coaches in the court report who have played against Rutgers this season, and they all seem to say more or less the same stuff, which is, hey, listen, both those young guys are terrific, and don't put this on Steve and his staff. That staff, they know how to coach. It's just a bad combination. These young guys are terrific talents, but they don't know how to win. They're not surrounded by people who are good enough, A, and B, know how to win. And so this is what you're getting.
No doubt about it. I just went back and checked, by the way. I had Rutgers 36 preseason in the top 101 teams. I thought that was maybe splitting the difference there between where you might have had them top 25 level and back end 50 to 55. And here they are. They're not even top 50 quality, not even close. As we speak this morning at KenPom, Rutgers is 88th in the country with fittingly an 8-8 record there. If you want to read the story on the court report, now let's make sure we put that in the episode description if we could, please. I talked to 4 coaches, head and assistants who have already faced Rutgers this season. Some of the quotes I put in the story, there were a couple of quotes that were objectively fair analysis, but they were a bit too harsh, so I couldn't put them, knowing that the coaches, no coach is going to go on the record and say this. I get all that and have their name attached to it. So there were a couple more that were also pretty brutally honest, but I wanted to, and the coaches completely understood. They're like, I'm just giving you what I got and giving you what I saw and all that. So the point is, the opinion in the coaching community around what's happening at Rutgers is this: Steve Pikiell is still a very, very good coach. Now, I know Rutgers fans are pushing back on that idea because they've got a lot of issues with how the roster was built. There's not enough production around the guys. But Dylan Harper, outstanding talent. We talk about 2 likely top 5 picks. It will probably be a surprise if he's not at worst number 2. Ace Bailey is where, like, he could be 3rd. You get some people that are a little bit, I'm not sure on that. Like, are we sure he maybe shouldn't be somewhere in the 6 to 10 range? They're likely to be both top 5 picks. And the crux of the hook of the court report lead is that there has never before been a team, and shouts, by the way, to Katie Sharp, the aforementioned researcher who predated Jared Burson, ESPN Stats and Info, who does an amazing job with StatHead and Sports Reference. She sent me a note on this. There's only been 3 teams ever with 2 top 5 picks in the same season, top 10 picks in the same season that didn't make the tournament. I'll get to this in just a second. But there's never been a team, period, with 2 top 5 picks that didn't make the tournament. And that's the overwhelmingly likely scenario here for Rutgers, which, again, is not on the bubble, is not even in the NIT conversation right now, doesn't own a top 80 win. I know you've got the quad numbers there overall. This was a big opportunity on Thursday against a Purdue program that's not as good as it's been in the past few years, that Rutgers nonetheless has defeated before. It was 3-4 years ago when Ron Harper Jr. hits the buzzer beater to beat number 1 Rutgers in Piscataway. I think that team was like 9-6 or so. It had a record similar, not quite as bad to this, and then it rallied, wound up making the tournament. Really big opportunity on Thursday, and it was spoiled. Purdue ran away with it. Wasn't as close as I even thought. Even knowing that Rutgers hadn't been playing well, I thought they would at least be able to keep this game a single-digit margin. Instead, it was 68 to 50 with the final. Purdue gets to 12-4, moves to 4-1 in the Big Ten. Rutgers is now 1-4 in the league, 8-8 overall. And I don't have all of the stats updated for last night's game, but going into last night's game, here's the interesting thing about this. Harper, for the most part, has been tremendous, although, as 2 coaches told me, Harper does get his dishes here and there, but when you actually watch them and you dig in, we've already talked about Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey he's not a distributor, he's not a passer, it's not a facet of his game whatsoever. But one coach in particular said these guys pass out of necessity. If you actually watch how Rutgers is running their offense and what they're doing, so much of it is on both of those guys. The next 5 minutes getters combined, GP, Jeremiah Williams, Jordan Durkak, Lathan Somerville, JaMychal Davis, Zach Martini. Those are the next 5 highest minutes getters. They were averaging collectively 10 points fewer than Harper and Bailey. And that's not the worst thing. It's not terrible, but it's not a situation most coaches would want to be in. They are more than 70 field goal attempts fewer than the duo. Their shooting isn't as good, 43% to Harper and Bailey being 49%. Their 3-point shooting is even worse. Harper and Bailey, 35% combined on the season heading into the Purdue game, remember. 28% for the next 5 highest minutes getters. Free throws, they're only 25 ahead, despite having 5 more guys on the season. And then this is wild. Blocks. Harper and Bailey, and a lot of it's Bailey, 24 combined blocks heading into last night's game. The other 5 combined, 21. They're not getting enough production. And even more than that, and the thing that 2 of the coaches talked to me about, and it was obvious to begin with, and Rutgers fans, I know you are all too aware of this. The irony of all of this is that Steve Pikiell had built a program at Rutgers that was known for its rugged, stubborn, I say this in a complimentary way, almost sometimes boring in how they could slog you and beat you. And it wouldn't always work, but it certainly worked enough. It worked to the point where Pikiell had a tournament-level team 3 seasons in a row. They didn't make the 20 tournament, but they would have gone easily. They were definitely making that tournament. They make it in 21 and 22. The past 2 seasons, it's been bad on offense, but they had a top 5 defensive efficiency at KenPom last season. Now you bring in these 2 freshmen who are a lot of fun to watch. When you watch them in a vacuum and you can see what they're capable of, and you understand why these guys are going to wind up, being highly selected in the NBA draft and potentially being very, very good NBA players. Whether they are or not, who knows? We'll see. Anthony Edwards was on one of the more irrelevant high major teams of the past decade, and it did not matter whatsoever when it came to how he was drafted and how he is in the NBA. Markelle Fultz was on an awful team, had a weird stigma attached to him, went number 1 anyway, and we see what his career is. So we don't really know what's going to go with either of these guys at the next stage. But in the here and the now, to see Pikiell, obviously and understandably, bring these guys in. No one would not take these guys. But it has been at the expense of the team's identity and defensive prowess, and that's what's hurting Rutgers so badly. So it is a huge bummer. I don't know if they can turn it around. Their next game is Monday against UCLA, and we'll see what happens with UCLA tonight at Maryland. I'll actually, after the pod, I'm driving down to College Park, and I'll be there to see that game. Then they're at Nebraska, they're at Penn State, and they're home to Michigan State. Every game is an urgent, got-to-win game for Rutgers at this point. It doesn't seem like they will turn it around, but they do have opportunities. When you got 2 guys that are that good, and Pikiell with his track record, it's a narrow possibility, but man, it doesn't even look like this team is going to. Remember, the Big Ten tournament, unless I'm almost positive the Big Ten tournament is not taking all of its teams. So there's going to be, 3 teams that don't qualify for the league tournament? Rutgers is actually in danger of missing that altogether.
Yeah, I don't see the turnaround. Steve was asked about it last night, and he was like, well, the good news is Selection Sunday is X amount of days away. And that's true, but I rarely like the idea of you having at one point in this season that is more than 2 months old shown yourself to be a good basketball team, but now you're just going to flip it and turn it around in a league like the Big Ten. Like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Not calling it impossible, but it is, with what we've seen, 16 games in GP, it seems highly unlikely. And man, that sucks, because it would have been awesome to be talking about this team weekly about, did you see what they did last night? Look at this. They're 3rd in the Big Ten. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And like you mentioned the Purdue game last night, that was the thing. Like, it felt over the whole time. It just felt like there was one point where, I'm in a hotel room here in New York City, and I was straightening up, putting things up, that type of stuff. Had the game on in the background, and you hear like a shot go in, and you hear the crowd erupt, and I'm like, okay, we got a game. And I turn around, it's like they cut it to 11. Mm-hmm. It was like the crowd was doing everything it could to try to get back. It's like the big pivotal moment was like, and they cut it to 9 or something like that. It was never, and then Braden Smith was really good. Yeah, it's one of those deals where it would be awesome if we had this to talk about, and then we could turn it into conversations about Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey. Like, everybody's always talking about trying to grow the sport and different ways to do it. Well, having 2 of the top 5 picks on a relevant basketball team is a great place to start. And it doesn't feel like we have that right now. Like, how many more times are we going to have an opportunity to lead a podcast on Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper? And honestly, we probably manufactured this one a little bit based on your work earlier in the week and the fact that they had a game kind of high profile last night. But I do think folks trying to draw big conclusions from this and make grand statements from this, like I'm more of a believer in everything as an individual situation, because if you're trying to use what's happening at Rutgers right now as an example of why you can't win with freshmen anymore, then we got to talk about Duke, which is starting 3 freshmen and might be the best team in the country. We got to talk about Illinois, who, I think 3 of their top 4 scorers are first-year college basketball players. 2 of them are technically listed as freshmen. So Is it harder in this era of college basketball to win with first-year college basketball players? Yeah, I think so. But is it impossible? No, it's happening at Duke right now. It's happening at Illinois right now. With Steve, I guess at Rutgers, this would make you reevaluate like what you did and question whether you should have done it. I just don't even know if that's worth the time. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you made this point before. What coach isn't taking Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey?
Never happening.
Right.
Never happened. You put any coach in America in the scenario that they were in or upcoming, it's never going to happen.
So you can say, well, like they shouldn't have lost their identity. They shouldn't have done, but like who's not taking these guys? So it's an easy thing to say, but like everybody is going to lose their identity over taking Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. They're just going to assume that's how you win national championships. My Rutgers identity, that's how you get a 9 seed. Like how you win national championships, you go take the 2 top 5 picks. Let's go. It was a no-brainer decision to do what they did. It's just not working. And that's disappointing. But it reminds me a little bit on a smaller level of things you heard coaches say about Shaka Smart when he went to Texas. Suddenly you're in Austin, this big, powerful institution, and you can get McDonald's All-Americans and 5 stars and future top 10 picks. But can you coach them the same way you can coach those guys in Richmond at VCU? Like, how many coaches mentioned that to you when Shaka was never really like running it in the ground at Texas, but it was kind of uneven. It just never popped the way I think people thought it would. That's why he's now the coach at Marquette instead of still the coach at Texas. But I remember multiple coaches saying, well, the main issue there, it's not like Shaka forgot to coach or Shaka forgot who he is. It's just he's recruiting a different type of player now, and you can't coach them, or he's having a hard time coaching them the way he was coaching guys at VCU. Perhaps this is the same thing on just a different level. At Rutgers, Steve and his staff had sort of established a way of doing things with a certain type of player. Well, then you get these types of players, and it can get harder to do those same types of things.
Agreed. And they just the combination of not being able to fulfill supplemental pieces around him in the portal, having a lot of pieces that aren't fitting together well, it is making for an awkward fit. One quote from one of the coaches, and this was echoed by I think 3 of the 4 I spoke to. One said, quote, "I'm not shocked by them not being great at all. You don't have to guard everyone else. From a technical standpoint, you don't have to overly defend everyone else. The game plan is how do you stop those 2 guys? They average combined 5 assists. They pass out of necessity." And then another quote in here says, "They're not hard to guard. They don't run around. It's not like 4 or 5 people touch the ball and feel involved. If you want to be a good offensive team, you have to weaponize the guys around them." And that's not happening whatsoever. I mentioned before there were only 3 teams that had 2 top 10 picks in the same season to miss the tournament. But guess what? Rutgers is the only team ever like this, ever. Because all those 3 teams were really good teams, and they happened before the tournament expanded significantly. The most recent example was 72, and then this is top 10, not top 5, top 10. 72-73 Minnesota. Jim Brewer was the second pick that year. Ron B. Hagan, number 7. They were a 21-5 team and finished second in the Big Ten. They would have gone to the tournament if you could get there with 2 representatives from leagues. That was not the case in 72-73. In fact, I think that was 2 years before they changed the rule. And then before that, you have to go back to the 50s when the NIT was considered just as good as the NCAA tournament. Western Kentucky in 53-54 went 29-3 and played in the NIT instead of the NCAA tournament, had 2 top 10 picks. And then coincidentally enough, Seton Hall, Rutgers' in-state rival, in 52-53 had a 31-2 team with Walter Dukes as the second pick, Richie Regan as the number 7 pick, also played in the NIT, and I think was the runner-up in the NIT that season. So there's never been a team with 2 pieces of high-end talent not be good like this. Just hasn't happened. Now, the fact that they're freshmen is obviously a part of it. And then you mentioned how it's working this season. I think there was also something to examine, although it doesn't always bust, because Cade Cunningham went to a place that doesn't typically bring in top 5 level recruits, and they did make the tournament that year, and they were, I think, a 4 seed. Now, they didn't advance deeply, but overall for Oklahoma State with Cade Cunningham, they did a decent enough job. But from Fultz to Anthony Edwards to Ben Simmons at LSU, those were specific situations where you had high majors bring in blue chip, super high-end talent that typically don't get those kind of players there, and it did not work. We're seeing it again with Rutgers. It's setting the table, interestingly enough, for next year. We'll see who and if anyone that's in that top 10, top 20, top 30 level joins him. But AJ DeBanza going to BYU next year. How will this work out? It's not that it can't. It's just that if you are in that spot and you don't typically do that, when you are able to, for whatever reasons, get the kind of player that your program is not accustomed to getting, more often than not, it does not work out. And by does not work out, I mean you don't even make the NCAA tournament.
Well, I mean, another example, this is year 7 for Penny Hardaway at Memphis. In the first 6 years, he had 2 top-ranked recruiting classes. One of them headlined by James Wiseman and Precious Achiuwa. That team was going to miss the NCAA tournament up until the NCAA tournament was canceled. The other one was headlined by Jalen Duren and Amani Bates. That team stunk. Right now, he's got a team that has no McDonald's All-Americans, no 5-star recruits. It's just a bunch of transfers, mostly mid-major transfers, and they're like top 20 in the country. So, I don't, but like there is a pattern that has developed where if you are that guy and you go to one of the places that doesn't usually get those types of guys, it is not going well. It doesn't mean that it can't go well at the next place. It doesn't mean that if you're dead set on, if you're that guy in the next class, if you're AJ DeBansa, you better change your mind now or else you're going to the NIT. It doesn't mean that. But the pattern, there is a pattern that is impossible not to spot if you look at it.
Last thing, we had a poll up since the start of the show. The question is, are you surprised Rutgers is this bad this season? I am. My answer would be yes, I am surprised they're this bad. But the poll says 54% no, not surprised. 46% says yes, they are surprised. I think if we could, broadly poll college basketball's fan base on November 1st and say, what's more likely, Rutgers to be 8-8 or Rutgers to be, 12-4. I think many more people would have said 12-4 than 8-8, but here they are, and they are fading from relevancy. Their only relevancy now is how not good they are. I'd love to see it turn around, but I don't have a lot of optimism.
All right, moving on. Few more things to get to before we get to the final 4 and 1. But first, let's get a word from our partners. All right, Norlander, Purdue over Rutgers. Got it. What else do we need to know that's happened before we get to the final 4 and 1?
Yeah, well, Thursday was fairly slow in college basketball, and that was by design because the CFP semis are ongoing. Hell of a game. Notre Dame beating Penn State 27-24, and really just an awesome game and a great, I tell you what, for the college football playoff, which took too long to expand beyond 4 teams, 12 feels like just about right. I wouldn't have hated 8, but 12 seems to be working just fine. To get Notre Dame in your championship game in the first year, I mean, that is incredible. And they're guaranteed to face another big-time major brand in either Ohio State or Texas, whoever wins on Friday night. So I did watch a lot of that while also engaging in Michigan State and Oregon, who also played on the Big Ten slate on Thursday night. They both win, both teams in green. Oregon's now 14-2 after winning 73-71 at what felt like a quietly pretty urgent game for Ohio State, frankly. Jackson Shellstad had 24 points, hit 4 3-pointers. Nate Biddle added 21, and they were able to eke out a win there. Michigan State had no issues whatsoever. It downright steamrolled Washington. It was 16-1, like 9 minutes into the game. Now Washington's not that good, but man, I thought it was pretty impressive for Michigan State not to mess around whatsoever. They win 88-54. Which of these two? Well, one this morning, which is ranked higher in your top 25 and 1, and Michigan State is 13-2, Oregon is 14-2, and which team? If you had to buy stock in the future of both of these teams over the next 2 months, who are you more likely to be aggressive on and say, even if you think they're pretty close, which one do you think is going to wind up being the better team when we can watch?
Well, I've got Michigan State at 9 in the top 25 and 1, Oregon at 14. But as I was prepping last night and aware that we were going to talk about this, you really start diving into the numbers and it's close. I mean, you could argue it in either direction. Oregon is 6-2 in quadrant 1, 2-0 in quadrant 2, so 8-2 in the first 2 quadrants. Like, that's obviously really good, whereas Michigan State's only 4-2 in the first 2 quadrants. So Oregon's got more quadrant 1 wins, more wins in the first 2 quadrants, same amount of losses. But I think you could argue Michigan State's got better losses than Oregon. Oregon probably better wins than Michigan State. but Michigan State better losses than Oregon. So I could argue it either way. They're both good. To answer your question, I'm just concerned for Michigan State that eventually the 3-point shooting will be a problem. It's just they don't take them as often as an analytics-driven basketball program would tell you need to. And even when they do shoot them, they almost never make them. And they're excellent defensively. They have one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to fall apart or anything like that. I do think that at some point statistically that probably is going to matter, isn't it?
Maybe, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, maybe not.
These are, I'll tell you what, right now, as I was watching, again, it's a home game against Washington. Washington's a non-factor, probably not going to make the Big Ten tournament. So I'd keep that in mind. And then Oregon to do this on the road against Ohio State, I thought it was actually pretty important. Ohio State they might be destined to be first four out, last four in territory. Who knows? But they're 10-6, and spoiling that on your home floor is not a good look for the Buckeyes there. But as I was watching both these teams, I was like, you know what? Like, they're better than I think people realize. And I would take Michigan State. Now, I identified Oregon in the court report as a team that was currently ranked, because we always, not always, but most seasons, you get to January, there's just a couple of teams that happen to be ranked, and then you go and look at where their ranking is, you dive into their profile in terms of what they're good at and what they're not good at, and you see where the predictives have them, and there's a little bit of a gap, and there are three teams that was true of. Memphis is one, Oklahoma is another. Oklahoma got beat earlier this week on its home floor by Texas A&M. We'll get to that before the end of the show. And then Oregon was another one I identified. Oregon doesn't do anything great. It is a solid team, but if you look at its turnover percentage, its offensive rebounding percentage, its 2-point shooting, its 3-point shooting, its steals and blocks, it doesn't rank in the top, in the 95th percentile, in the 90th or 85th percentile. They just aren't great at anything, and they're solid. They're solid across the board. Jackson Shelstad is a very good and improving guard. I still like Oregon to be they are a fun potential team to get hot in the tournament and make a run. We've seen them do that with Dana Altman before. I would lean Michigan State, though. I think Jace Richardson continues to get better. I think he is the kind of player where if you're a Michigan State fan, you're aware of what he is and how he's improving. And because they are not good at shooting three-pointers, Richardson is the exception to that. Now, he's only taken 28 so far this season, but he's 46.4% from beyond the arc so far. It's really him and Trey Holloman, and that's pretty much it. And maybe that's all it needs to be, because you mentioned the three-point shooting and the lack thereof. I get that, but the last time Michigan State lost, I saw it happen right in front of my face to Memphis, who was hot again and had an awesome time in Maui. Since then, they beat North Carolina by 3 in overtime in Maui. Another great game that UNC needed to storm back from. Then the scores are 90-72, and some of these are high majors. 89-52, 77-58, 86-69, 80-62, 69-62 on the road against Ohio State last week, and then 88-54. I'm more prone to trust Michigan State, and they've got this interesting setup where Akins is averaging 14 points a game. He's not a good 3-point shooter, but he's really good at the foul line, and he's good. He's a good conductor. Then between Richardson, Cohen Carr, who is a firecracker of a player, obviously, and arguably, maybe inarguably, the best dunker in the sport. I think I heard Robbie Hummel say last night, he was in studio for Big Ten Network, he's the best. He said he's the best in-game dunker on the planet, which is one hell of a statement.
Whoa.
And Robbie Hummel knows what he's talking about. The best in-game dunker maybe the most reliable in-game dunker on the planet. But he said, and Cohen Carr's no joke. Yeah, you can push back on it. Are you going to stand up for your guy Ja? Because Ja has certainly got a.
Well, I mean, we have multiple professional athletes.
I know, but I think it's more like
including Kevin Durant, who have labeled Ja Morant the most athletic human on the planet. Yeah. So you could go Ja Morant, you could also go Anthony Edwards.
Yes, I think it's more the aesthetics of what his dunks look like when he does it versus like.
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not interested in starting an argument with Robbie Hummel about who the best dunker is. I don't care right now. I don't care. I concede the point.
No, it's okay. Go after Robbie. I think he'd appreciate it, honestly.
All right. You know what? I've had enough of that Robbie Hummel thinking he knows of all people, how would Robbie Hummel know what a dunk looks like?
Exactly. There we go. Spice it up. I like it.
I'm sure he's right.
Richardson, Carr, Jackson Kohler. Kohler, he averages more points than boards, but he's continues to play a very specific and good role for the Spartans. Him and then Fears is the primary distributor there. And between him and Akins and how they play off each other, I would lean Michigan State, but they're two really good teams. Again, we don't have to dive back into the Big Ten race. We're going to be able to talk about that plenty over the next 6 to 8 weeks here, but both these teams are on display, and on Thursday, they both got good wins. I would lean the Spartans here, but it will be interesting to see if they can fix the 3-point thing, because I don't think they can, and maybe they don't need to. Maybe Richardson does grow into the guy that becomes the go-to shooter, and if they can scheme around it and not have teams scout against it and shut him down, they're going to have a shot. But to this point, it hasn't much mattered. They have been beating down a lot of teams and a lot of high major teams, some of those away from home.
All right. Michigan State's good. Oregon's good. We'll see who's better as the season progresses. Let's get to the Final Four and One. It's presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Man, once upon a time I had what I genuinely believed was an insurmountable lead. Now I can't ever pick more right than wrong in any given week. It's a rough little stretch. I'll run you through the numbers in a second. First, let's get one more word from our partners. Oh, it's getting close.
I love the bass line in that Masters preview.
It's so pretty. Just makes me want to go outside. Except
high up on the neck there.
Except when I go outside, I know it's 20 degrees outside. So then I realize.
Welcome to the Northeast, buddy. That's right.
Man, it's so cold. Man, like I don't even.
Cold. Well, you want to let's just act like a couple of olds here. It's not just cold. Where was I? What was I doing? I was talking about with someone this yesterday. Oh, I was getting my hair cut. Your boy got snipped here. And it was, I was getting my hair cut, and then there was a guy who was like, he had to be 70 and great dude, but he was a couple chairs over, and he's like, oh, it's so cold. And then the barber was like, yeah, that's right. But he goes, but you know what makes it bad? And in my head, I'm like, I know what he's going to say. He's going to say it's the wind. He goes, it's the wind. Like, so if you want to engage in this conversation, I
tell you, the wind is a problem. I co-sign what this fella's saying. The wind is a problem. It's so cold in New York City that yesterday I had delivery. I ordered delivery.
How are you going to, you better have tipped 50% on this order. You're going to make people drive around in the wind in New York City. Man,
them dudes got bicycles. They ride around on bicycles all night long.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine riding a bicycle in Manhattan right now.
You better have tipped heartily.
Of course. Norlander, who do you think I am?
I'm not. Hey, no joke. I genuinely believe that you did it, and you aren't just saying it for the show. Just to be clear,
of course. Who do you think I am? But not exaggerating. I ordered delivery food from a place that is maybe 50 yards from the front door of my hotel.
Oh, you're good to go.
I just said I can't do it.
Now I hear the point you're saying. You're like, I'm such a wuss.
I'm not walking out that door. I just want. I did not want to walk outside.
Actually, you know what? I'm even angrier now that you made them do this. It was that close.
I had to walk less than a minute, and I just said I'm not doing this.
That's terrible. That's actually awful. Okay, you didn't make someone travel, 9.5 blocks away. That's good. They were right there. But then I'm thinking, no, what are you doing? Just if it was within a block, on the same block,
is on the corner of my street. Yes,
terrible.
But it was like, it's just cold, man. I was like, I'd rather pay extra money than walk outside. That's how cold it is. I said I'd rather pay extra money than walk outside.
Someone wants to know, did you pick the drop at my door in the hotel, or did you go down to the lobby?
I tried to get them to come to I always ask them to come to my door, and they can never get here. They can never get here. Yeah. I always ask them, and then they always call me from the lobby, and they're like, hey, I'm in the lobby. And I'm like, you didn't read the delivery instructions, did you, buddy? And they're like, I'm in the lobby. There's just, it never works. I have never had them knock on my door, but every time I tell them they can if they want to. I give them consent to come straight to my door, and they don't. They never do. I have to go meet them in the lobby. It's a lot. Everybody has challenges in their own life. I understand that. Life is not easy, and I mean, you see what's going on. I mean, turn on the news.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on,
but I got happening in California, and then there's you.
I got my own
guy to get to the 7th floor to drop off food right outside your, Room 71.
I mean, it's technically the 20th floor.
Okay.
It's the 20th floor.
Sorry.
Everybody's got their own stuff going on. I'm not trying to tell you my stuff's more important or worse or better than anybody else's. I'm just saying everybody's got their own stuff. And my own little tragedy that I'm dealing with this week is I cannot get a delivery person to come to my door to save my life. I got to go all the way down to the lobby, 20 floors, straight down.
That was the biggest load of crap I've ever heard.
What's game one?
Last week I went 2-3. So did you. So my season record.
Surprised it was that good.
So my season record is now 19-26. I'm 7 games below 500. I'm like if Rutgers were playing the Final Four and won.
You're worse.
I might be worse than Rutgers. Man. You start feeling good about yourself. You get a billboard, then you realize you're worse than Rutgers.
Yeah, that's true.
It's tough, man. I'm telling you, I'm dealing with my own
The
stuff.
ego's out of control these days. You get the billboard, come to my ordering the food from 50 yards away.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget where you came from. All right.
Yeah, don't forget.
those
It's important to stay humble. It's important
It's
to stay
not
humble.
going to happen. I don't have time to do it today. Parrish has been name dropped in a hip hop song. We'll get it on the pod sometime soon, but we've lost him for good, folks.
There's a lot of there's a lot.
Mississippi GP.
I can't even count all my blessings. I got so many blessings right now, but then you look up and you go, I ain't no better than Rutgers when you get down to the
That's right.
core of it.
Let's take these games.
Your record's 20-25.
Let's move it. Keep it moving.
It's the Final 4-1 presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Game 1, Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern. It's number 9 UConn at Georgetown inside the Jaden Daniels Center. I think he deserves it.
Yeah.
You can watch it on Fox. Kim Palm's got it UConn -3. It's the Alex Carabin bounce back game.
It is. We'll get to that just in all of 17 seconds. Love when we do this show when you're in New York and it's a sunny day and the sun slowly moves.
Are we doing that again?
You can do whatever. I don't mind it whatsoever. I just like slowly but surely.
I need another
Over
building
your-
right there. I don't know why we can't get another building right there. It would
You're
change. It would change the entire podcast if we
You're
had
about
one more
15
building right
minutes
there.
of the rotation of the Earth away from being that meme from Oppenheimer.
It really does happen in the mornings because I'll start the Gary Parrish show sometimes, and buddy, that A block, I'm looking good. By the C block, I look like I just got shot straight down from heaven.
This is amazing. Okay, game 1 here. UConn at Georgetown. Yeah, how about Nova? Nova getting the win over UConn Wednesday night. Kyle Neptune doing a good job. Alex Carabin, it was toss-up call there. A little bit of a tricky whistle. And then Carabin, who's a quality foul shooter, misses 2 free throws. Hurley said after the game, yes, I'm going to paraphrase him, but he basically said, it's been a fairy tale first couple of seasons for him, and sometimes you get some bad luck here. And if you're feeling down, do what I did after Maui. Go pull out your 2 title rings, rub them together, remember how great things are, and then let's go ready to play Georgetown. That's a good approach, good attitude. UConn is 12-4. Nova, by nature of the win, 11-5 overall, 4-1 in the league. Kyle Neptune's team has 1 loss since November 24th. Pretty good job overall by Nova, and they got a game at St. John's, which we'll get to in just a second here. But UConn, back-to-back road games in the league. There's only one other time this season that'll be the case, and that's in February when they got to do Creighton and Seton Hall in the same week. Georgetown, it gave Marquette a real go of it on the road. Georgetown's 12-3. Huge opportunity for Ed Cooley's program here. This is a really tasty affair. I like this game a ton. You said it's UConn -3. I will stick with the Huskies in a road situation. I think Dan Hurley's crew gets it done, wins by more than 3. But I like the fact that we've had a couple of these now, and we'll see if it can maintain. I just like the fact that we've just got a Georgetown game here or there that's worth truly tuning into, talking about, and following. I don't know if the Hoyas are going to be a tournament team or not. By that I mean NCAA tournament team. But you win this game, and then we can really start talking about something. That said, I'll trust the Huskies to not get bounced twice in a row and win on the road by more than 3.
It was nice to see Kyle Neptune get what I think is the biggest win of his career. Obviously, this has not gone smoothly, replacing Jay Wright. And I'm not insisting that what happened a couple of nights ago is a turning point. It could just be a awesome night when your opponent happened to not have its best NBA prospect, right? But it was a nice win and perhaps something that can spark something else. Nice to see him have that moment. Nice to see that fan base have that moment, given, how few of them they've had in recent years. Hate to see it go down the way it went down. Alex Karaban, I gather, had never missed 2 free throws in a row in his college career. And
good cue. I don't know.
And then he steps to the line and he misses both of them. And then the second free throw was there to be offensive rebounded, and he just doesn't even move for it. I think, I don't want to get into his head, but it looked like he was just in shock. Like he couldn't believe he actually missed another one. But either way, he didn't make a real effort toward the ball, and it was there to maybe grab and have another opportunity. I thought Dan's quotes were exactly right after the game. Hey, we don't have to get too down. We've done a lot of good stuff. But I do think what we watched the other night is a UConn team that they lost 4 starters from last season's team, and now they're down their best NBA prospect as well. That's a lot to overcome, and things can get difficult, at least relative to the expectations that program has established for itself. On the other side, this weekend, I know the other night in studio, I was giving it to Wally Zerbiak and Chris Walker a little bit because they picked Georgetown over Marquette at Marquette pregame, and then when Georgetown was actually up at halftime, really started celebrating a little bit. But what I said about Florida after its loss at Kentucky is the same thing I'd say about Georgetown after its loss at Marquette. They've won games. That's nice. I'm maybe more impressed by the way they played a team I know's quality on the road than I am in any of the wins that they got. I'm a believer in Georgetown. I think they're good. I think Georgetown's got a shot to go to the NCAA tournament in year 2 under Ed Cooley. I'm ready to.
They do, but let's see how this game goes, and if they can get the win over UConn, then I think we can really engage in that possibility. Let's just see how they respond. 2 huge back-to-back. They're playing the 2 best teams in the league on in a matter of 3-4 days time here. So I just want to see how they respond. So.
How much have you seen Thomas Sorber?
Plenty. He's been a very, very good freshman and one of the more under-discussed, unheralded first-year players in the sport here, but he's been good. I would argue he's been a top 10 freshman in the country.
He's great. I mean, it's a guy who was only 46 in the class of 2024, according to 24/7 Sports. That's why, we didn't mention him one time on the Island. This is maybe the first time he's been mentioned on the Island College Basketball.
I've dropped at least one mention before.
Maybe. But barely top 50 in his class. Those are not the type of freshmen that typically get much attention. Now he's a projected one-and-done top 20 pick, according to our friend and former colleague Sam Vicini, now at The Athletic.
We'll try and get him before the end of the show.
He'll be here, but he's averaging 15.3 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.1 blocks per game. I haven't put together a list of freshmen, but I'd have a hard time finding 9 better than him. I think
right now it's our colleague Cameron Salerno does the Frost Watch each week, top 10. Give it to you right now, real quick. Flag is 1. Harper is 2. Casper Siakashonis, Illinois is 3. Ace Bailey 4. Jeremiah Fears 5. Derek Queen, Maryland. I'll see him tonight 6. Ian Jackson 7. Trey Johnson 8. Boogie Flan 9. Yegor Demon at BYU 10. He does not have Sorber in the top 10.
This is the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen in my life.
I would put him in the top 10, but again, the freshman class has been really, really good this season.
That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful to Thomas Sorber. I'm taking Georgetown.
Okay, there you go.
I'm going to take Georgetown in Washington, D.C.
No, there's no way of finding this or tracking this. I'm genuinely curious the last time you would have even been in position to pick Georgetown in the Final Four and 1 and would have actually picked Georgetown. We put out that post that graphic to social every Friday. I don't know if in the history of the Final Four and 1 you've ever had that Georgetown dark navy blue G next to your under your name, and this could be the first. So there you go.
Well, it's a momentous occasion in the history of the Ion College Basketball.
Oh, yes, Max. What's game 2?
Game 2, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern. It's number 8 Florida at Arkansas inside Jerry Jones Arena. You can watch it on ESPN. Kim Palm's got it, Florida -6. Did you see Jerry Jones on Landman?
I did. That was he genuinely did a great job. I don't think he was acting. I think he was channeling the massive disappointment of this Cowboys season, getting into the chambers of his heart and how much of a letdown this has been. And yeah, he didn't go toe-to-toe with Billy Bob Thornton and John Hamm in that scene. He exceeded them. That was one of the greatest on-screen performances by a sports figure I have ever seen in my life.
It really was. He was like, I wanted to redo the Golden Globes and give one to Jerry Jones and also to Mikey Madison. Jerry Jones was amazing. Landman streaming now on Paramount Plus.
Arkansas +6, you said?
I said Florida -6. You're the one trying to put Arkansas's name on it.
Arkansas has lost 2 games in a row. 76-52 at Tennessee, and then 73-66 Wednesday night at home against Ole Miss. Save the majority of the Arkansas conversation for Sunday if they lose this, because I think we're going to have to get into it more. This is a biggie. I think Arkansas is going to show up and play well. I'm going to take Arkansas +6 at home in Bud Walton. They got that slobber hog on the court. You cannot not show up. You redo the court. You get that saliva-laden tongue right there on the hardwood. You got to show up. Boogie Flan's been really, really good. Adu Thero, how do you play in this kind of spot against a Florida team that, again, we talked about on the previous show, but 14-1 and coming off such a high against Tennessee? Is this game an example? Will it be a microcosm of life in the SEC? And by that, I mean an Arkansas team on a 2-game losing streak. It turns around. We look up on Saturday, and boom, they get it done. 8-point win over the Gators, who are coming off a destruction of Tennessee, and suddenly they go on the road. They don't look like the same team. Will it be that, or will these teams continue to behave the way they have been, with Florida looking like one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country, and Arkansas looking like a team that's not even going to be in the top half of the SEC? I will take John Calipari's team to get its act together at home, get this done, and cover the 6.
John Calipari 0-2 in the SEC for the first time ever.
Good note.
0-2 in a league for the first time since he started 0-2 in Conference USA.
You should have trivia. All right, instituting self-trivia time. I'm going to say, I'm going to blindly say 03-04.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh!
Ding, ding, ding. 03-04, otherwise known as my second season on the beat, which ended in a second-round loss to Oklahoma State, which was led by future Grizz legend Tony Allen, who was the 2004 Big 12 Player of the Year. Shouts to TA, now my coworker, Grind City Media in Memphis. Once eliminated John Calipari from the NCAA tournament. Arkansas is 47th in the net now, which ranks 14th in the SEC. They're 1-4 in quadrant 1, 2-4 in the first 2 quadrants, and right now projected by KenPom to finish 7-11 in the SEC. They're going to have to outperform that, or they're going to miss the NCAA tournament.
Let's see how they do in this game, and then we can really dive into their scenario. If they win, if they lose, then let's huddle up here.
I cannot give a preseason top 20 team with a slobber hog on its court 6 points at home. That seems like a lot, right? I'm taking Arkansas +6.
Same page.
Game 3 Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern is Villanova at St. John's inside Conor McGregor Garden. You can watch it on CBS Sports Network. KenPom's got it St. John's -6. Did you realize that UFC 205, Conor McGregor against Eddie Alvarez, is widely considered to be the biggest event in the history of Madison Square Garden with a record gate of $17.7 million. Did you know that?
It's not. That's not what it is. That building, there have been many other events that have been bigger deals than that. And maybe no other event has brought in more money at the gate, but come on now. And I'm not this like, I know Conor McGregor was he was a genuine fighting sensation for 5-6 years. I get that. That's not the biggest event in the history of the Garden.
It is widely considered to be the biggest.
Not widely
event.
Considered. I guarantee you, it's not widely. You go up to 500 New York sports fans on the streets around the 5 boroughs and ask them what the biggest event in the history of the Garden is, and maybe 9 of them will give you the McGregor fight.
It sounds like you don't have Google.
Yeah. You've been checking Google lately, seeing those results that are popping up.
I have been checking Google lately. It's wild out there.
Exactly. Come on.
Record. How about this? I'll tell you what's indisputable. The record gate at Madison Square Garden is $17.7 million, and that was connected to UFC 205, Conor McGregor against Eddie Alvarez.
What year was that?
One of those years?
Yeah.
It's one of those years.
Really came down with information. Can we pick
Yeah.
this game, please?
Yeah, you pick it. I can't wait for you to pick it.
St. John's 13-3, one loss since the last Sunday of November at Creighton by 1. Patino's team, it's tracking to what I told you in the preseason. Potential top 15 status here. They get this game at home against Villanova. I'm not even hesitating here. They get it done. Here, Richmond has a really good game. Davon Smith. I think they're going to have an all-around tremendous output here. Johnny's win. Johnny's cover. -6. Give me a big win. I'll say double-digit win for St. John's over Nova.
You see Villanova get a big win the other night, and you go, okay, like maybe I need to take a fresh look at Villanova. And you take a fresh look at them, and it's like, ugh, they still got it. It's still yucky. There's still a yucky body of work. They got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, just Dixon in this game. You got to have more. He can go for 28. That's fine. I'm sure St. John's will be fine if they go for 28. They can shut everyone else down. Got to be a huge team effort. Interesting spot for Nova. If it wins this, then we really start talking if they've turned the corner in a significant way. But I got Johnny's.
My guy Chris Walker in studio the other night said Eric Dixon should be the National Player of the Year.
Can't go that far.
I agree, but how do you deal with stuff like this?
I would have him as a first-team All-American right now. Because he leads the country in scoring on a high-major team that's doing well. He's not the National Player of the Year right now.
I agree with, I think, all of that. He's averaging 25.7 points per game, shooting above 51% from the field, above 47% from three on 7.1 attempts per game. After never shooting threes as a freshman, now he shoots 7 a game and makes above 47% of them. Yeah, I think he's got to be in the All-American conversation. But for him to actually be National Player of the Year conversation, the team's got to be better. And, how about this? We're going to talk about Arkansas after what happens this weekend. We'll talk about Villanova and Eric Dixon as well. Let's see what happens against the Johnnies. I'll take the home team as well. St. John's -6. I'll lay the number in the Garden. Game 4 Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Number 5 Alabama at number 10 Texas A&M inside Alex Caruso Arena. You can watch it on ESPN. KenPom's got it. Texas A&M -1. Alex Caruso, A&M alum.
Yes.
Averaged 8 points in his A&M career.
I know. One of the more truly shocking, successful NBA players I can ever recall.
Averaged 8 points in his A&M career and is now on an $81 million contract
for him,
with the team that's in first place in the Western Conference.
Good for him.
Good for him.
A&M 13-2 did not have Wade Taylor IV against Oklahoma. They win 80-78 because Zurich Phelps hits a late three. He went for 34 in that game.
Yeah.
Really big performance. Really, really good game. Tremendous game. Oklahoma blew an 18-point lead in the second half. What a slice, really. But good on Buzz Williams' team. Solomon Washington has been a noted presence as well there. Yeah, man. I think A&M put it in. We had our dribble handoff on Thursday. SEC inspired by the chat on the pod here. SEC or the field to win the tournament. You took the field. I took the SEC to be consistent with what I said on the show. But in my opinion, you look at the SEC, and I think that Texas A&M right now. Let's see what it does in this game. Big opportunity against Bama at home. I think, and this will be true if they win. But right now, I'd put it's Auburn, Bama, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. Those are probably the 5 people would say are the national title contenders. Why not Texas A&M? It rates better than Kentucky at KenPom right now. It's a 2-loss team, has 1 loss since the opening night of the season, and has a really, really solid defense and some such good returning pieces, core experience. We talked about that in preseason. I'll take them to get it done. Give me A&M to beat Bama at home and get really a defining win, and in doing so, elevate them to the conversation more consistently of SEC contender and Final Four contender in the process.
That was an awesome win the other night, but that was a weird win. Like, that was a loss that they just flipped into a win because they had a guard go crazy. But I know it counts.
Sometimes you look up and are like, here's why this team's really, really good, because here's 3 results over the past 3 months.
Yeah.
Should not have won those games. They found a way to do it, and those things can sometimes correlate.
Yeah. It's just like that was one where you look up at the end and it's like, wow, they pulled that off. How they pulled that off? I mean, they were down big in the second half. Obviously, the answer is Phelps went bananas. I think that might say more about Oklahoma, though, than it says about Texas A&M.
Yes. Oklahoma is a team I have to fade. Still could be the tournament, good team, whatever, but I don't think Oklahoma is a top 20, maybe not top 25 team, big picture down the road.
considering we're unclear whether the Aggies will have the fourth version of Wade Taylor. And I got to go opposite you somewhere because I've been mounted and surmounted. I thought I was insurmountable, but turns out I'm very mountable.
Oh,
Given that
you love getting mounted.
You got to calm down.
Right. Oh, I do. Okay.
You got to calm it down a little bit.
Yeah, tell me I'm wrong. All right, here we go. Pick the game.
You got to calm down a little bit. All right. Considering we don't know about the availability of the fourth version of Wade Taylor, and I got to go opposite you some places to try to mount you and then surmount you, I'm taking Alabama on the road plus the point.
Okay. And one Saturday, 6 Eastern, ESPN. Pretty solid Saturday here. Not like ultra stacked, but pretty good all around. Number 1 Tennessee at Texas on Brandon Mouton court. Shouts to Brandon Mouton. What do you know about Brandon Mouton, GP?
I know some stuff about Brandon Mouton.
Damn right you do. Tennessee is getting 5 according to Ken Palm. Texas with the rare opportunity of hosting the top 2 teams in the AP poll in back-to-back games. We hardly ever see this, period. They lost against Auburn on Tuesday, 87-82. Prior to that, they lost by 20 at Texas A&M last weekend. Can Rodney Terry's team get it together? Because next after this is at Oklahoma, at Florida. And if you don't win against Tennessee on Saturday, then you're staring down a 5-game losing streak potentially. Remember that Oklahoma game, not only a quality team on the road, but that is a rivalry game. And so we'll see what waits there. Who do you got? Tennessee -5.
I'm going to call it a bounce-back opportunity for the Vols. Rick Barnes in his old stomping grounds, reminding them that maybe they pulled the trigger a little too quickly down there in Austin, Texas.
Okay. I mean, he was there like 20 years, but okay. I don't know if it was too quickly.
Who's doing better post-divorce?
But who's to say that it wasn't better for both parties to do that?
I think you can easily say that. I think that's probably a proper assessment of things. But still, that wouldn't stop me if I were Rick Barnes from walking into Austin talking about how y'all been since I left. My team's ranked number 1. That's the type of stuff I'd be saying.
Over under Chaz Lanier 22.5 in this game.
It's a big number, Norlander.
Let's see how much he's averaging here. I think he's averaging like just over 20. Or is it 19? I'll bring it up here. He didn't play well the last game. Chaz Lanier is averaging 19.6. Yeah. All right, 21.5. Over under 21.5 for Chaz Lanier.
I'm going over Chaz Lanier. I'm going Rick Barnes reminds people that maybe they pulled the trigger a little too quickly down there in Austin once upon a time. That'll be the reminder sent to the University of Texas this weekend.
Which UT you got in this one? Which UT and Orange are you taking?
I have said Tennessee 50 times.
Wanted to make sure. I also have Tennessee -5. Here's your quick else what to know watch guide for Friday and Saturday. Friday, Maryland at UCLA, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm here now. I will be there then. Gonna make the drive down the old NJ Turnpike. Get that done. In fact, let's wrap this show in the next 3 minutes if we can, GP. I want to get my giddy up on Saturday. Louisville at Pitt, noon Eastern, ESPN2. That's a good one. San Diego State at New Mexico. That's on America's Most Watched Network at 1 Eastern on Saturday. At 2 Eastern on ESPN, Iowa State at Texas Tech. Can Texas Tech knock off a top 5 team at home? Keep an eye on that. Kansas is at Cincinnati at 2 Eastern on ESPN+. That's got some intrigue to it. Certainly, Cincinnati, can it stop the bleeding a bit in the Big 12? Oklahoma plays at Georgia, 6 Eastern on ESPN2. Good vibes for the team that can come out of that one with a win for sure. Indiana is at Iowa, 8 Eastern, Fox on Saturday night. Really good opportunity for Iowa. Indiana's got some key wins as of late that has really steadied itself, but there's some trouble ahead on the schedule here. We'll see how Indiana manages that. And then a few more to know. Boise State at Utah State, 9 Eastern, CBS Sports Network on Saturday night. That's a really good Mountain West tip and a big opportunity for Boise State on the road or for Utah State to reinforce what it's been this season, and that has been a top 25 level team. And then quality game in the Big West, 10 Eastern, ESPNU, Saturday night, UC Irvine against the team with the longest winning streak in the country, UC San Diego. That's big time stuff in the Big West. And speaking of stuff out west, this isn't official yet. I think it's trending this way because of the wildfires in California. I would expect the LMU Pepperdine game to get bumped, but that decision is not in as of Friday morning at 10:32 Eastern time. But given what continues to happen there, they've moved the NFL wild card game between the Vikings and the Rams to Arizona. They pushed off the Hornets-Lakers game as well. And as I was told on Thursday, both LMU and Pepperdine, which are in that area, they coincidentally both also have their arenas being worked on at the moment. And so there are open areas where the air quality can just get in and they can't have proper ventilation. So it seems like that game getting bumped should be an inevitability, but it has not been officially determined just yet. Just keep an eye out for that on Saturday, and we'll see what happens there. And again, thoughts and prayers truly to everyone.
Yes, it's awful.
It's just, I mean, it's been a while since we've had a major news event to this kind of level where it's extending out days and days, and the destruction. I mean, the entire, California, that part of our country has just been burned, and the geography, the landscape of it has been changed forever. So no doubt, I know there are people that watch the show, consume the show, that know people that have been affected. We send nothing but our best, and hopefully cooler temperatures and better situations come as the hours go along here over the weekend.
Yeah, I'll let other people make the decision. Obviously, that game could be played or never be played, and I probably wouldn't have noticed one way or another. But seems, like that part of the country is devastated right now. If we skipped the basketball game, surrounded by burned down houses and stores and schools and trees and everything else, I don't think anybody could complain. And you're exactly right. We joke around a lot on this show, but that is heartbreaking stuff, man. I mean, we've all been, you and I at least, and certainly some people listening, we've spent time out there. We know people who live there. We have friends there. Some of us have family out there, and when you hear people say things like these places that many people, describe as the most beautiful places in America, and the places where some of our wealthiest people, like, you could live anywhere. Where do you want to live? I want to live there. The idea that place, those places will never be the same, and not even be anything close to the same for years and years and years. It's just really devastating and heartbreaking. So if you're going through that, just know that we're laughing through an hour episode of a basketball podcast, but our thoughts are with you. It's really, really scary stuff and sad stuff out there. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments. So please do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.